Hello everyone, this is Rick. Welcome to an episode where we will discuss how railways came into India. Now, many British historians, especially the sympathizers of the British Empire, have this habit of saying that Britishers did the railways in India for the Indians, as if they did it out of goodwill or charity. But was it really the case, or they had some selfish motives behind developing railways in India? So we will discuss all those things in great detail. Now, before we get into this video, I would like to say that this video is catered according to the syllabus of class 11 ISC board chapter number 1. However, anyone interested in this topic can go through this video. At the end portion of the video, we also have given a few question answers which will help you in your exams. So please carry a notebook with you so that you can note down the important points. So let's get into our core topic, that is railways in British India. So British neglect an early transport system in India. So how did the British neglect Indians and how was the early transport system in India? Neglect by East India Company. During early rule, East India Company ignored transport and communication. So in the first half of their rule, the East India Company paid no attention to transport and communication. Their only priority was to expand their territory and trade. So army posts were set up at trade centers instead. So people, the East India Company, in order to take major control over the people, set up army posts at the trade centers. Rivers were there and land routes were also there. So river transport was mainly used for trade and passenger traffic. Land routes were there which joined different regions, forming India's own system before British rule disrupted it. So before the coming of the Britishers, there were river routes, and if you see northern India especially, many perennial rivers are there which connects important places in India. So with the help of river routes, joining all those places together was possible, and river transport is the cheapest form of transport. So those things already existed in India. And then there came the industrial revolution. So the industrial revolution and surplus British goods increased demand for internal goods transport and raw material movement like jute, saltpeter and cotton. So what the Britishers used to do, they used to take the raw materials from India, then those raw materials were collected and kept in some port, namely Kolkata port or Mumbai port, and from there those raw materials were transported to Britain. Then they made finished products out of those raw materials, and those finished products were again sold in India at a very higher price. So that is how they extracted India out of its resources, and this entire process required good transport systems so that they can move the raw materials like jute, saltpeter and cotton. And there were also merchant concerns. The British merchants and Chamber of Commerce criticized the lack of proper transport and communication in India. So the British merchants, in order to conduct their business properly within the Indian subcontinent, needed proper transport and communication, which was not there. Then there was economic compulsion, means because of certain reasons like exporting goods and importing raw materials to Britain, it was very much necessary to develop proper transport system in India, and thus it finally led to improved transport and communication infrastructure. Then there was British capitalism and railway initiatives. So how was the British capitalism and what initiatives were taken to improve the situation of railways in India? So British capitalist interest. British capitalists wanted to explore new sectors in India, building roads, ports and harbors. So British capitalists are the people who invested a lot of wealth in India, and now their concern was how to get profit out of their investments. So they wanted to explore new sectors like building roads, ports and harbors. So company directors wanted to cover all the possible losses by investing in new enterprises like building roads, ports, and harbors. So, imperial military needs. Now, British military, which was in charge of India, that is, the military of East India Company, in order to extract the Indians out of their resources, military had to be strong, or else the Indians will protest and extraction or exploitation of Indians would not have been possible. So their imperial interests required development of roads so that they could move the soldiers swiftly across various parts of country, and especially after 1846 when railways were linked to internal security. So after 1846, railways were a matter of internal security. So it was not for the common need of people. British had capitalist interest and they also needed to move their soldiers troop movements across different parts of the country. Then there were key statements like in 1853, Lord Dalhousie said, England is calling aloud for cotton of India in sufficient quantities which can only be conveyed by railways. So in England, cotton business was booming, but they did not have the sufficient raw materials. Now, who will provide those raw materials? Of course, India. So England was calling aloud for cotton in India, and for that purpose to transfer the cotton from India to Britain, one part was railway. Most of it was transferred through ships, but within India the collection of cotton would have been impossible without railways. William Bentinck's role. He focused on transport improvement and built trunk roads from Calcutta to UP Governor from Calcutta, and that was facilitated by UP Governor Thompson, who executed. So William Bentinck gave the responsibility of building this rail track in of building this Grand Trunk Road from Calcutta to UP to Governor Thompson, and he executed it very quickly. Next was steam navigation. Now steamers, I already told you that internal river navigation was very much prevalent before the coming of Britishers, but this technology of steam navigation was not there. So steamers improved the riverine transport between Calcutta and Assam. So Kolkata became connected to Assam with the help of steamers, and thus Assam was famous for tea. Hence, tea transport and trade in East Bengal became very popular. Then there was the PWD department. PWD department means Public Works Department. So their duty was to manage the well maintenance of roads and also building roads. So entire transport department came under the purview of PWD. Next up, we have Lord Dalhousie and railway construction strategy. So, what were the strategies implemented in order to construct the railways in India? So, Dalhousie's vision. Dalhousie initiated the central PWD, assigned the military board, and began coordination from Bombay and Madras branches. So, he designated the PWD department as an organ of central government and also gave responsibility of construction of railways to the military board, and thus From Bombay to Madras branches, he was coordinating everything. PWD roles. The department handled road repairs, bridge construction, irrigation support, and maintenance of public buildings. So, PWD not only built roads but they also handled repairs, they constructed bridges wherever necessary, they also were in charge of supplying water to the fields which needed proper irrigation, and also all other government buildings for public purpose was under the care of PWD department. After the 1857 uprising, PWD gained more power. Montford Act of 1919 gave road building powers to the provincial government. So, Public Works Department got a lot of power after the revolt of 1857, which was also the first war of independence of India. And then there was the Montague-Chelmsford Act of 1919 that gave huge road building powers to the state or provincial government. So every road which was built before 1999 had to be permitted by the central government. But after 1999, road building powers were on the hand of provincial government. So the building pace increased rapidly. Limitations of roads. Roads and river transport were limited by weather. Floods and dry seasons disrupted year-round movement. So road and river transport were subject to weather developments. Hence, everything cannot be done on the road throughout the year. So road and river transport departments were sometimes hampered by bad weather conditions. So people preferred railways, or the Britishers preferred railways because it was faster and it connected the ports to markets and vice versa. And also vast portion of the subcontinent was connected through railway. Railways were much more reliable than the roadways, and railways also reached rural areas, aiding the flow of British goods to the village bazaars and raw materials back to cities. So penetration to interior was one of the characteristic feature of railway, and huge amount of goods could be moved through railway at a very fast period of time. Now, move penetration into interior does not mean that it was for the benefit of the rural people. It was for the benefit of British businessmen who did business in the rural markets, not for the common Indian people. There was no benefit for them. So funding, execution and exploitation via railway. So how was the railway funded? How was the entire system executed? And how did the railway help in exploiting the Indians of their resources? So joint stock agreements. British joint stock companies were promised 5% return and free land for building. So 5% profit was guaranteed to the people who would invest in building railways in India, and also they will be given free land. They retain full profits and government covered the losses. So this is a thing which should be understood. British companies, whenever some company wants to build something in India, at first they will have to buy the land. But here land was already given for free, and 5% return means 5% from profit was guaranteed by the East India Company, that if you come here, if you are wanting to build railway, then your land is free, 5% profit is guaranteed. And whatever profit you will do by running railway in India, you will keep the whole profit. In case if there is any loss, then the East India Company will cover that loss. Now, the thing to understand is that if there is profit, then that profit will go to Britain indirectly through the companies which are building railways in India. But if there is loss, then Britishers or the East India Company will not cover that loss from the money of Britain. They will cover that loss from Indian money. So profit is not coming to India, but loss is definitely going from India. So East India Company's role. The company assured indemnity to investors burdening Indian economy. So if there is any loss, company will cover it. And whose money will the company cover it? With Indian money. So Indian economy was very much burdened. And British companies siphoned huge profits. So British companies who built railways in India, they got huge profits from this, because first of all, they did not have to buy the land for building railway. There only half of the cost gone. And next, they were guaranteed 5% profit. And also, if there is any loss, then there will be indemnity from the British East India Company. So there was no loss at all. Parliamentary criticism. In 1873, the guarantee system was abolished after criticism in the British Parliament. So there were a few good Britishers also. They abolished this guarantee system in 1873 in the British Parliament. Ackworth Commission. So there was another commission made, whose head was a person named Ackworth. So he recommended the government to take over the railway. So now railway, until now railways were owned by private companies, British companies. Now government is taking over the railway, and guarantee system resumed in 1888 at a reduced 3.5% interest rate. So now the railway is being owned by the government, but any private company can use the railway. They can take it on lease, and so they will have to pay 3.5% interest to the government, which is the East India Company. And this money will not at all be used for the benefit of Indians. It will be siphoned off to Britain. So foreign domination. Railways were built in Punjab, Sindh, Rajputana and North Bengal with heavy foreign capital involvement. So the heavy foreign capital came to India, and through this capital, now the sympathizers of the British Empire will say, see, there was huge foreign investment in India. But that is not true. Foreign investments came so that they could take away more profits from India. So yes, definitely. The East India Company, with the help of private companies of Britain, established railways in India by investing huge money. But whose money was it? It was the money of Indians only. And the profits they got all was were taken away in Britain. In case of loss, they were paid again with Indian money. So there was no benefit for Indians at all. Italian statement. Italian statesman Cavour said that railways were roads to unity and civilization. So this was a political statement given by an Italian statesman who supported this policy of exploitation through railways. Impact of railway on Indian economy and society. Now, what was the result of railway construction visible on Indian economy and society? So, economic exploitation. British companies profited through the construction and interest. The railways served imperial motives. So, British companies were totally at a profit through the construction of railways. They got interest also, and this helped in their expansion and looting policies. Karl Marx critic. So Karl Marx was an economist who in 1881 said that railways were useless to the Hindus. Hindus as in Indians, because most of the Indians at that point of time were Hindus only. So railways were useless to the Indians. That was said by Karl Marx, because railways increased poverty in India. Foreign merchant benefit. So foreign merchants got a lot of benefit. Railways facilitated export of Indian raw materials and import of British goods. Indians paid but didn't benefit. So we were only giving money and we were not seeing any result of it. Freight and discrimination. So Indians paid higher freight, foreigners paid less. The fees of traveling in railway also was very much different. Indians had to pay more money in order to use the railway, and foreigners had to pay a lot lesser money than the Indians. So Indian passengers also sometimes, even though Indian passengers, very limited number of Indian passengers ever got to sit in the railway, got to travel in the railway during the time of Britishers, but still, however few it may be, Indian passengers faced discrimination in higher class compartments. Some compartments were reserved only for the Britishers. Import dependency. So engines and railway parts were imported. Everything was brought from Britain. So nothing was made in India. Therefore, Indians could not even profit by making or helping in the construction of railways. So Indians were excluded from high ranking posts. Whatever high ranking posts were there in the railway department, there were no Indians in it. Only 10% posts were Indian held. So only 10% of the railway workers were Indians, and most of them were low class or lower division workers. Cultural unity. So this is one positive thing about railway which happened during the British era, is that railways helped cultural exchange and unity. People traveled for work, and urban centers like Bombay, Calcutta and Madras flourished. So people could travel for work. However, it was only the rich people who could afford railway, and thus different kinds of diverse people traveling together created a sense of unity, and that gave to the rise of nationalism, because educated middle class used railways for communication. English education and newspapers fueled nationalism. So people came in contact with each other through railway, even though it was only the rich people who came in contact with each other, but still this is one of the positive thing which happened because of the railways. Now we will go through the questions and answers which will help you to understand this chapter in a much better way. Why did the merchants want development of transport and communication system in India? Need for internal trade. With the growth of industrial revolution, merchants needed to transport surplus British goods from towns to interior Indian markets. Export of raw materials. The merchants required an efficient system to bring raw materials like jute, saltpeter, cotton, etc. from villages to ports for export. Economic exploitation. The development of transport enabled British merchants to sell British manufactured goods in Indian markets and buy raw materials cheaply. Chamber of Commerce complaints. The British Chamber of Commerce and British merchants expressed dissatisfaction over the lack of suitable transport and communication infrastructure in India. Reduction of costs. Improved transportation reduced the time and cost of moving goods, which was crucial for profit maximization in colonial trade. Continuous supply. Merchants wanted reliable year-round movement of goods, which was not possible with seasonal river and land routes. Expansion of markets. A developed transport system helped merchants penetrate rural areas, increasing their market reach and demand for British goods. Discuss the role of Lord Bentinck and Lord Dalhousie for the improvement of transport and communication system. Initiatives of Lord William Bentinck. Bentinck focused on improving roadways and ordered the construction of trunk road between Calcutta and the UP. Work of Governor Thompson. Governor Thompson executed Bentinck's orders efficiently, helping connect Kolkata and Assam via trunk roads. River transport in Assam. Lord Bentinck supported the improvement of river transport, especially for the tea trade between Calcutta and Assam. Lord Dalhousie's strategic vision. Dalhousie recognized the importance of railways and roadways for governance and commerce and invested in their development. Founding of Central PWD. He founded the Central Public Works Department to coordinate road building and maintenance. Military board involvement. Dalhousie assigned the military board to supervise infrastructure development tasks like road repair and bridge building. Advocate of railways, Dalhousie called for railway development to meet economic and administrative needs and famously remarked in 1853 that only railways could carry cotton in sufficient quantities for England. How did the improvement of communication help the imperial states? Control over Indian territory, improved communication allowed faster movement of British troops across India, strengthening control over the subcontinent. Suppressing of revolts. Railways enabled quick deployment of military forces essential for suppressing insurrections and maintaining law and order. Administrative efficiency. Enhanced transport helped the British efficiently manage distant regions by linking administrative centers. Integration of markets. Communication advancements unified India's fragmented markets, allowing smoother economic exploitation by the imperial state. Revenue generation. Railways and roads facilitated the movement of goods and resources, increasing trade volume and tax revenue for the empire. Imperial safety concerns. As noted by Lord Hardinge in 1846, railways were also planned for the safety of the British Empire against uprisings. Military strategy. Movement of troops from station to station became quicker, a key need for imperial security during expansions. Improvement of communication system helped the growth of Indian nationalism. Do you agree? Give reasons. Enhanced mobility of people. Railways enabled people from different provinces to interact, fostering a sense of unity across regions. Rise of metropolitan cities. Cities like Bombay, Calcutta, and Madras became urban hubs where diverse communities connected, creating pan Indian solidarity. Middle class consciousness, improved transport and communication connected the educated Indian middle class, enabling discussions and awareness of national issues. Spread of newspapers. With better communication, newspapers reached a wider audience, spreading political awareness and nationalist ideas. Access to English education. Improved mobility helped students access educational centers, contributing to a politically aware generation. Common platform for resistance. Railways allowed leaders to travel and organize meetings, thereby uniting Indians and anti colonial movements. National integration. Italian statesman Cavour's remark that railways are roads to unity applied aptly to India, aiding national integration during colonial rule. So that was all about how railways developed in India. It was mainly for the British business facilitation. We had road networks and river transport, but before the coming of British, we did not have railways. Hence, railways created a sense of unity among Indians also. So that is how we will see this development of railway in India as an agent of British imperialism that helped the Britishers to extract resources properly from India. So thank you for your love and support.